Throughout most of history, there's been this belief that men and women are fundamentally different creatures, and it probably begins with the Bible. Sex is a biological term. It refers to which chromosomes you have. 2X is female, X and Y is male. Gender is a social construct. These are expressions of masculinity or femininity, and both of these are spectrums, and they overlap.
Boys and girls are far more human and far more the same than they are different. If you gave 50,000 psychological tests to girls, it would fall out on a bell-shaped curve. If you gave the same 50,000 psychological tests to boys, it would fall out on a boy bell-shaped curve. If you superimposed them, they'd be 90% overlapping. You've got the shoulders that stick out on either side, and those are very often the traits that feed into our stereotypes.
People make the assumption that because the brain is biological, that any sex difference in the brain must be hardwired. But the brain is plastic. The brain changes as a result of experience.
You go through a process called proliferation and pruning, which is that you make a whole bunch of brain connections, and the ones that you use are strengthened, and the ones that you don't use die back.
Whether it's empathy or aggression or spatial ability or verbal ability, things that a child spends their time on, that's what they're going to be good at. Parents, from even before a child is born, start thinking about the child differently. They decorate the room differently. They buy different clothes. So this notion that there is such a thing as gender-neutral rearing, or that parents are not responsible for gender differences, is a psychological impossibility.
We are becoming much more bifurcated in terms of hypermasculinity and hyperfemininity. Girls' products have become much pinker, and boys' products have become much more camo and much more violent. And it's not just in the toys, but it's also in television programming and movies. This hypermasculinization and hyperfeminization reflect cultural tension and fear about the fact that gender is socially constructed. And we respond in ways to try to organize and simplify the world that actually end up simplifying it to such a great extent that it puts pressure on young men and young women to fit into those boxes.
You gotta go in there and you gotta be tough, but you can't be sissying out.
By the time a boy is 5 years old, he's pretty much taught that it's not okay to cry in public. He may still do it, but the expectation is by the time he's 10 that he's perfected it. And if he's 12 and he's still crying in public, there's a problem.
Oh, my dear God. Are you one of those single-tier people?
You are a worthless pansy ass who is now weeping and slobbering like a 9-year-old girl.
Boys are not encouraged to talk about any kind of pain with anyone else. And when they do talk about pain, fathers particularly, but mothers also, tend to focus more on how to solve that, or what they're going to do, or their actions.
Hit me. Hit me. Come on. Come on. Come on, son. Come on. Son, left.
They're learning how is it possible for them as boys to be in the world and to engage in their relationships and to behave in ways that will be considered socially acceptable. And in learning to accommodate to those ideals, they're learning to conceal or just downplay qualities that are traditionally associated with girls and women.
Mothers are told that if they hold a boy too closely, they're hurting his development. You're making him a mama's boy.
You want to be a flying monkey mama's boy snitch? Or do you want to be a man?
Now, being a mama's girl or daddy's little girl, that's wonderful. But a mama's boy? It means somehow he's soft.
Have a great day, sweetie pie!
We're concerned that our child is going to be ridiculed, or concerned that our son will be the target of violence. And so we give him what we think he needs in order to avoid that.
Mario, football players don't cry.
What?
Football players don't cry.
The reason men are less likely to show empathy, less likely to show vulnerability, less likely to bring up children in that kind of way, is that they've been socialized into this.
I was really very moved by the fathers who brought their little 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds to school in the morning, and how tender these men were with their sons, how patient and loving they were with these little boys. So I asked them, what do you see in your sons that leads you to say, I hope he never loses that? And the fathers spoke about their sons' out there quality. They were so emotionally open, and their real joy in their friends. And the men felt that on the road to manhood, they themselves had lost touch with these qualities in themselves. And the quandary for them was, would they have to silence the very qualities that they most valued in their sons? It was the most exquisite sense of dilemma.